Is the modern movie fan spoiled? Do we expect too much from our films these days? If a film isn't a 5-star, A+, 10 out of 10 masterpiece, it's usually considered a failure. By what standard do we judge films? Is it by its score on Rotten Tomatoes? It seems films are only placed in one of two camps: all-time masterpieces or worst films ever. There really is no middle ground. What is it about all this judgmentalism that makes people demand that films be classified as either pond scum or a classic for the ages? Do folks even realize that a film or show can be pretty good and not a soul-shattering, life-changing experience? In a sense, the majority of filmgoers these days tend to prize themselves as armchair critics. They don't set out to see a movie with the intention of simply enjoying it. They set out to critique it. Call me crazy if you must, but I don't go to a film as an academic exercise. My main objective when seeing a film or TV series is to enjoy it. And that's pretty much how I personally conduct my reviews. What did I take away from the piece on an emotional level? How did it make me feel as a piece of art? Did it speak to me in the manner in which the artist intended? Or in the case of comic book film adaptation, did they honor the source material? Did they do right by the fans? Did the director sacrifice core precepts of the characters to satisfy his own intentions? Another of the problems is this groupthink mentality that stems out of reliance on social media. Our first reaction whenever a film comes out is to check the reviews. What do the critics say? What is its Rotten Tomatoes score? And it colors your perception of the film, be it consciously or subconsciously. You go into it not with a clean slate, but with the criteria already in place. You may have set the bar lower, expecting it to fail, or have your hopes set a bit too high, expecting a masterpiece, when in reality all you got in both cases was simply a solid effort. I'm not saying managing your expectations is necessarily a bad thing, and I'm not saying you need to cover your ears when your friends give you their impressions, but you should go into any film or TV series neutral, and able to form your own opinion on it. But social media these days has caused this lack of independent thought. If we're told by enough people that something's bad or of poor quality, we're supposed to accept it as fact, without taking the time to reason it out ourselves. And if the source are critics, be they legitimate or otherwise, that tell us something is poor, we're supposed to accept their authority as the gold standard, and admit that we enjoyed a bad movie. Oftentimes forcing ourselves to rechristen these films and shows as guilty pleasures. It's basically the masses' collective need for acceptance. No one wants to claim to love a bad movie. Who doesn't want to hang with the cool kids? Certainly those learned individuals who determine the good films from the bad know more than you. Who wants to debate why you enjoy something? It's a thankless endeavor. It's always been easier to trash something mercilessly than extol its virtues. And it's certainly easier to claim a movie as a guilty pleasure than to try to justify why you enjoy it subjectively. But are there really such things as objectively bad movies? Art being subjective as it is, if I enjoy a movie or TV show, the fact that I was able to enjoy it means that, for me, it wasn't bad. It doesn't matter what someone else thinks or the number of people that have the opposing view. For me, it worked on a level that I could appreciate. And I don't need to justify my feelings and opinions on something that can only be measured in a strictly subjective manner. Now, it's possible to objectively categorize certain aspects of a production, but that's more a result of composition. It's all window dressing. I can objectively say the CGI in this film was pretty poor, or the action scenes were not choreographed very well. That can be objectively determinable. But at the same time, that may not have any impact on my overall opinion of the piece. My criteria for rating anything typically consists of did it live up to my expectations. For example, I gave the film Tom and Jerry Meet Sherlock Holmes 5 stars. Now I'm sure some of the more cynical among you may say, does that mean he thinks it's as good as The Godfather or The Empire Strikes Back? Not necessarily. But did the film meet my expectations for a concept titled Tom and Jerry Meets Sherlock Holmes? Absolutely. A lot of critics strain out a gnat and swallow a camel, to use a biblical reference. I can't see how a lot of critics these days do the whole routine of, I've only given 3 films a 10 in my entire life. No film or series is ever perfect. Some come closer than others, but if a film comes close enough to meeting or exceeding my expectations, I have no problems giving it 5 stars. 5 stars means it meets or exceeds my expectations. 4.5 stars seems to be my go-to. It's sort of an all-purpose rating for me. Generally, it means it has problems that keep it from being an exceptional work, but it's still great. It can range from a B+ or an A- depending on how I use it. For example, I gave both Civil War and Age of Ultron 4.5 stars. But Civil War was a legit A-, while Ultron was more of a B+. I guess if I were to do it all again, it would be best to use the ABC ratings. But the 5-star system is the traditional one for film reviewers, and hey, I'm a traditionalist. 3 stars means it's good, but has flaws that go beyond the superficial. 2 stars means it's flawed on a fundamental level, usually saved by good performances. 1 star means it's not without positive qualities, but it's like that DVD you keep on the shelf for years collecting dust. You reach for it every so often, but after watching it, you remember why it was on the shelf collecting dust in the first place. 0 stars means surely there must be better uses of your time. I'm always real with you guys. That's really the only way to be. I always give you my honest opinion, and I don't always give the popular opinion. I like films that most people generally dislike, and I'm not really big on some movies or shows that are highly lauded. But I always tell you guys my honest, unvarnished opinion. I don't really consider myself a critic per se. I prefer to take an everyman approach to discussing films. I don't engage in analysis because to me, that inevitably leads to over-analysis and nitpicking. But I always try to keep my reviews substantive, because I think it's important to convey why I like or dislike something rather than just make generic, it's good, it's bad statements. I try for that sweet spot of giving you the most detailed information that I can on my view without overextending the subject and risk the viewer losing interest. I also consider myself an entertainer to an extent, so I think it's important that I inject humor into the proceedings when possible. And as the bard said, brevity is the soul of wit. So I try to make my points as concisely as possible, making my reviews generally under 15 minutes. I think most people are willing to give you around 15 minutes before they get antsy. Of course, if my analytics are correct, most people will only give you a minute and a half. But all views are very appreciated. Where art is concerned, everyone will take something different away from an experience. There's no right or wrong opinion on any work of art. The old saying applies, one man's trash is another man's treasure. I can explain why some piece of art works for me, but what works for me doesn't have to work for you. And something that works for you may mean nothing to me. That's the nature of the beast. Too many times people these days feel the need to have their opinion validated by the masses, and I could never get that. Why do you feel the need to have everyone agree with you? Are you so insecure with your own opinions that you need some form of approval by an authority figure? In the end, your opinion is no more or less valid than mine. There's no one true authority that decides if your opinion on a film or series is the right or wrong one, and if everyone agreed, that would be boring as heck. I don't really care if my opinion is the popular one, as long as it's my genuine opinion. And that's the way it should be. So exercise your God-given right to your own opinion. Don't let anyone tell you how you should or shouldn't feel about a film, because where art is concerned, the only opinion that really matters is your own. This is Johnnie Torch stepping off from my soapbox and reminding you, keep the flame burning brightly, and I'll be with you again real soon.